These sneaky little mother buying up a whole bunch of gold right up under our noses. Record amounts of gold are being bought up by central banks, and of course, no one is talking about it because it seems like almost no one knows about it. You better start paying attention because there's a reason that the central banks are buying a load of gold right now. We'll get to the reasons shortly, but just a quick reminder, make sure you subscribe. The tag economy is growing super quick, and we'd love to have you as a part of the community. Now, back to these slimy-ass, snake-like central banks. You know what these central banks actually remind me of? Central banks remind me of like those short little backstabbing mobsters you always see in the mobster movies, like Joe Pesci, right? The ones that are like really loud and obnoxious, and they always end up shooting their best friend in the back of the head at the end of the movie. That's exactly what central banks remind me of, you little snakes. Anyways, let's get into the data on what all of these slimeball central banks are actually doing. So check out this first chart. The first thing I want you to pay attention to is how much gold was bought in 2022. Central banks bought an estimated 1,083 metric tons of gold in 2022. That's like 400 more tons of gold than was ever bought in a single year. And note this, between the collapse of the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971 and the early 2000s, central banks were mostly net sellers of gold. But in the aftermath of the global financial crisis of 2008, central banks became net buyers of gold and have maintained this position ever since the great financial crisis of 2008. And you can see that in the data on the chart. 2022 was a record year by far for central banks buying gold. So you would think, well, they probably slowed a little bit in 2023, right? Well, as my kids would say, nah, bruh. Not bro, bruh. All right, so let's check this out. So this chart includes the first 3 quarters of 2023. Now, the pink is the fourth quarter, and that data wasn't in yet for 2023, even though we're now in March of 2024. But notice something. Just the first 3 quarters of 2023 are the second highest purchases ever. And you can see that this states the following. On a year-to-date basis, central banks have bought an astonishing net 800 tons, and that's 14% higher than the same period last year. So that means that we were on pace to buy even more gold in 2023 than we bought in 2022. If you don't understand why this is so important, well, you got to subscribe to our channel, man. Tim and I cover this all the time, and if you care about protecting yourself and your future, you have to be in the know when it comes to this stuff. And look, I know I throw around a lot of jokes on here, but I'm being serious here. This is very important stuff. Now, the central banks consist of some of the most powerful and influential entities and people in the entire world. And of course, a bunch of short, backstabbing little slime balls. And hey, I'm allowed to make short jokes because I'm short, at a whopping 5 foot 5 inches tall. Now, imagine a large number of the world's billionaires buying up tons of stocks in the same company, and no one notices. And it's not big news, it's huge news, yet no one is talking about it. And it's no mistake that they've been net buyers of gold since the 2008 financial collapse. That moment in 2008 was when they started to realize that the fiat currency system doesn't have long. Now, most people, especially us in America, we're so pig-headed, we think that the status of the dollar is just like written in cement, right? Like the dollar is just so dominant and it's so relied upon that it'll be the boss of the financial system forever because it has been for a long time. Like we can just keep running up these huge deficits and just creating more and more inflation. And really, I think we egotistically say this because we're saying like, well, where the hell else is anyone going to go? They're going to go to the euro. They're going to go to the yen. They're going to go to the pound. All of those currencies have problems as well, if not more problems. And it would just be switching from one flawed fiat currency to another. So people think that the dollar is just going to keep its dominance because there's no better alternatives. After the 2008 financial collapse, these central banks started realizing something, right? And that was that the fiat currency system is broken, and it's broken to a point where it can't be fixed. There's no fixing this. You see, if you take a look at history, fiat currency has a 100% failure rate. It's a major contributing factor to the decline of some of the largest empires. I'm talking about like the Athenians and the Eastern and Western Roman empires. It massively contributed to the downfall of them. So when the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, they were either stupid enough to think that they could make a system work that has never worked before, or they created this system knowing that it would eventually crash, but in the meantime, it could be used for massive profits, control, and power. Either way, the realization is here that this system is unfixable from where we are right now. And we can use one of the most basic but awesome quotes ever, and that is, actions speak louder than words. The central banks don't have to tell us a damn thing because their actions are telling us everything that we need to know. Looking back at history, right, financial systems have performed spectacularly well when gold was used for money. Now, paper currencies have come, they failed, and they've gone. Gold has been the one consistent form of money that has always worked for thousands and thousands of years. And what happens is financial systems generally start with gold as their form of money. And when we're doing this as a society, everything works great, right? But then comes a growing empire, right? And the human nature of greed starts to kick in. As an empire grows, well, there's more expenses like social programs and militaries and eventually wars. This is costly, right? It costs a lot of money. And to make sure that they can pay for all these new expenses, the empire starts to debase their gold. It starts with 100% gold coins. The 100% gold coins go down to 80%, which goes down to 50%, eventually goes down to 20%. Eventually, it becomes worthless base metals, just like we have today, right? With the penny and the nickel and the dime and the quarter, all worthless. You see, the thing about gold is it can't just be produced, right? It can't be produced like that. It comes from the earth, and it's a time-consuming, labor-intensive, and lengthy process. Worthless base metals and fiat currency can be produced very cheaply and very quickly. This, of course, with human greed, turns into a huge influx of money entering, which eventually goes to inflation and eventually hyperinflation, and eventually the collapse. Human beings, unfortunately, don't have the ability to use something like money successfully that has no value. We're just simply too greedy. We always want more. And then once we get more is never enough because we always want the next step. Well, gold puts that to an end because you can't just magically put more gold into a financial system as money. And over thousands of years, nothing has been found that works better than gold as money. And if you think something has, I want you to name something in the comments that is a better use for money than gold, and I'll tell you why it isn't. Now, you could argue that Bitcoin is with the new technology, but outside of Bitcoin, name something else that's a better use for money. So let's go over why gold is like the king of being used for money, because all of these things can't be found in anything else, and definitely not as well as gold. So number one is it's scarce, right? Gold is rare enough to be valuable, but not so rare that it's impossible to find. Number two, it's durable. Gold is highly durable and does not corrode, does not rust, or tarnish over time, which makes it a lasting store of value. Number three, it's divisible. So gold can be divided into smaller units, such as coins, without losing its value, right? It can be melted down or recoined easily. Number four, it's convenient, right? Gold has a high value to weight ratio, making it convenient to store and transport a significant amount of wealth in a relatively small space. Number five, intrinsic value. Gold has intrinsic value due to its physical properties and the cost associated with extracting and processing it. Unlike paper or digital forms of currency, gold's value isn't reliant on government backing. Number six, it's universally accepted. Gold is universally accepted and it's recognized for its value. It has been used as a form of currency across various cultures and eras, giving it a historical precedent as a trusted medium of exchange. Number seven, we're almost done. It's difficult to counterfeit. Number eight, gold is not directly tied to any specific government or political entity, which makes it a safe haven asset during times of political or economic uncertainty. Number nine, liquidity. Gold is a highly liquid asset. It can be bought and sold relatively easily in markets all around the world. So what else on earth can match gold as a use for real money? You could argue Bitcoin, but outside of that, diamonds, is that going to do it? Yeah, good luck, right? Diamonds are extremely hard to determine value because of things like cut and clarity and color and carat. There's just a lack of uniformity when it comes to diamonds. It's also difficult to divide, right? There's a lack of liquidity. There's durability issues. They have high value relative to their size, so storage and transportation is a huge security risk. Gold is king. The central banks are likely realizing that we're going to have to go back to using gold as the global reserve currency, just like we did before. Because when we did it before, the financial system worked, right? And going back to gold as the world reserve currency is the one thing that can kind of fix what is happening right now. Now, I use fix lightly because it might eventually fix the problem, but a storm is about to hit before that happens, and a lot of people are going to lose out on a lot of money and experience a whole lot of pain. Remember, gold is the thing over the last thousands of years that beat out everything else for the use of money in the free market. By the way, it wasn't governments that decided that gold was going to be used as money, it was the people. And let me tell you something, these slimy central banks, they know this. And they know that the time for fiat currency is over. And I believe it's exactly why they're buying gold in record numbers. Actions speak louder than words. The central banks don't have to tell us anything. They're showing it. They're showing us, right? And it's exactly why these central banks are buying gold in record numbers. The central bank's actions are giving us all the information they need, right? They're not telling us everything. It doesn't matter because their actions are showing it. Don't ignore it. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Also, make sure you subscribe so we can keep you updated here at Tag Economy. Catch you soon.